Let's unlock some serious people skills today. We're doing a deep dive into How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
A classic.
Right.
Really?
That book your boss probably loves.
It's really popular for a reason. The advice is still so relevant.
Totally. It's not just about work, though, right? It's about connecting with people, handling those tough conversations, and just feeling more confident in general. I read this study once after health. Knowing how to get along with others is what people want most. Wild, right?
Not really when you think about it. Carnegie was onto something about our deep need to feel important. Even more so than basic needs, he said, like being hungry or tired.
It's true. Everyone wants to feel valued, right?
Absolutely. And recognizing that is at the core of Carnegie's whole approach.
Okay, so how do we actually use that? Give me the good stuff.
Well, he lays out 6 kind of like practical principles for, making people like you.
Perfect. I'm all about actionable advice.
Yeah.
So what's number 1?
Become genuinely interested in others, he says.
I can see why that's first. I used to think I had to be the most interesting one.
Ah, yeah, we've all been there.
For sure.
Yeah.
But then I had this experience. Totally changed my thinking. I'm at a dinner, right, next to this, famous botanist, and I know nothing about plants.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. But instead of trying to impress him, I just listened, asked him about his work, and guess what? It was fascinating. We talked all night, actually became friends after that.
That's awesome. It shows how powerful genuine interest can be. It's not about you, it's about being curious about them.
Exactly. When you ask those open-ended questions and really hear the answers, people feel heard. And when they feel heard, they feel valued, which is a perfect segue to principle 2. Smile.
No.
Simple, but
It makes a bigger difference than you'd think.
Totally.
Yeah.
A genuine smile can change the whole vibe of a conversation.
There's actually research on this. One study found that when a vet brought his dog to the office, people were just instantly calmer.
Oh, I bet everyone was smiling at the dog.
Exactly. And that smile, even if it's not at you, lightens the mood.
It's contagious, that good energy.
Yeah.
But it has to be real, right?
Oh, for sure. People can tell if it's fake. Just like with being interested, a true smile shows you're open.
And who doesn't want to be around someone like that? Okay, hit me with principle 3.
This one's huge and so easy to remember people's names.
The worst. I'm working on it constantly.
Carnegie was adamant about this. He said, a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound.
I get it. Have you ever been at a party, someone remembers your name, you're like, how?
Right. It proves they were paying attention, that you were worth remembering. There's this great story about Jim Farley, a political guy.
Yeah.
He'd run these huge campaigns, meet tons of people, but he'd remember thousands of names.
What was his secret?
Little notes. He'd write down things about each person, family, job, whatever, so the name would stick.
Smart. But you know what I like about this principle? You don't have to be a genius to use it. Just trying to remember someone's name, even if it's just your barista, it makes their day.
Totally. Small act, big impact. And speaking of impact, principle number 4 is all about really listening.
Oh boy, confession time. I am a terrible listener.
Really?
The worst. I thought I was good at conversations. But I realized I'm usually just waiting for my turn to talk, not truly listening.
It's common. Apparently, the most used word in phone calls is I.
Ah, figures. Everyone loves talking about themselves.
Right. So when we really listen, we're giving people what they crave.
It shows you care.
Exactly. There's this story, this telephone company employee had to deal with a furious customer.
Oh, I've been there.
So the customer was ranting about a billing issue ready to explode. Instead of interrupting or getting defensive, the employee just listened, let the customer vent, acknowledge their frustration.
Yeah.
By the end, the problem was solved.
No way. Just from listening.
Yep, it disarmed the whole situation.
I need to practice that for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got being interested, smiling, remembering names, and being a good listener. What's next on our list of people skills?
All right, number 5. This one's especially good if you're trying to, really get someone on board with an idea. Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Ooh, strategic. Okay, I like where this is going. But how do you do that without sounding fake?
It's all about finding that genuine connection. Carnegie tells the story. This salesman spent 4 years trying to land a client.
4 years. I'd have quit way before then.
Right. But get this, he finally figures out this client, he's obsessed with this one organization.
Yeah.
So instead of his usual sales pitch, the salesman completely changes tactics. Starts talking about the organization, their work, the whole deal.
And did you get the client?
He did,
Okay.
because now he wasn't just talking at the guy, he was connecting with him. on something the client actually cared about.
It's like speaking their language, but not actually. Unless you're like royalty. Carnegie talks about how he learned Spanish before touring South America.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
Right. But it shows the point. People respond when you meet them on their level. Love it. Okay, last principle for making people like us. What's the grand finale?
Number 6, it kind of brings it all together. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Yes. Doesn't it feel good when someone remembers something about you? Or goes out of their way to help?
Totally. It makes you feel seen.
For sure.
Carnegie tells this story, it's sweet, about this older woman. She's selling her car, a Packard, which was a big deal back then.
Fancy.
Right. So this young guy, he's interested, but instead of, geeking out over the car, he starts complimenting her house, how beautiful it is.
Okay, I see where this is going. He found a different connection point, not the obvious one.
Exactly. And the woman is so touched, she ends up giving him the car.
No way. That's amazing. But you're right, it has to be genuine. You can't fake that kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's not about tricking people, it's about seeing their worth.
So true. Okay, we've covered a lot here, Carnegie's 6 principles, but let's be real. Not every conversation goes perfectly. What about when you disagree? Or there's like a conflict. How do you handle that?
Well, lucky for us, Carnegie has some great advice for that too. It's all about turning those critics into friends. And the first step is huge. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Oof. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I can be quick to criticize, especially when I'm stressed.
It's human nature, right? But Carnegie says that criticizing, it's like a poison dart.
Dramatic, but I get it.
It hurts people's pride, makes them defensive, and it usually doesn't even work.
True. You're not going to get through to someone if they feel attacked. So what do? If you can't criticize, how do you deal with mistakes or bad behavior?
That's the thing. There's a better way. Ready for this? Carnegie says to admit your own mistakes first.
Wow. Okay, to talk about disarming the situation.
Right. When you admit you're not perfect, it changes things, shows the other person you've been there too.
It levels the playing field. Suddenly they're not being judged by, like, Mr. Perfect.
Exactly. There's this story about a businessman. One of his employees made a big mistake, cost the company money. The boss was furious. But instead of yelling, he took a breath and said, "Listen, I've messed up tons of times. Let's figure out what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again."
Okay, total 180. He went from being angry to, like, a supportive teammate.
Totally. And the employee, he was so relieved. Ended up being one of their best workers because he felt appreciated.
I love that. Okay, so admit your own mistakes. What else?
This one's about perspective. Understand the other person's point of view.
Walk a mile in their shoes.
Exactly. We all get stuck in our own heads, assuming everyone sees the world like we do. But everyone has their own reasons for thinking and feeling the way they do.
Oh, this reminds me of this fight I had with a friend.
Yeah.
We were both convinced we were right. Just yelling over each other. It was a mess.
Been there.
It wasn't until later I actually listened to them, understood where they were coming from, that we had a real conversation. And honestly, I was wrong.
That's the power of empathy, right? It opens you up to new ideas.
Totally. Okay, so we've got admitting your own mistakes and seeing your side. Anything else to help with these disagreements?
This one's interesting. Begin in a friendly way.
Even if it's like a serious conversation.
Yes. Think about it. If someone comes at you angry, are you open to what they're saying?
No way. I'd get defensive immediately.
Right. But if they're respectful, even if you disagree, it totally changes the mood.
It shows you're still coming from a good place.
Exactly. It sets a better tone for the whole conversation.
I like that. So start friendly. What else? What about like actually during the conversation? Any tips?
This one's for you, Chatterbox.
Uh-oh. What did I do?
Carnegie says, let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Oof. That's tough.
Right.
But I'll try anything once. Why does that work?
Well, it shows you care about what they have to say. You're not just waiting for your turn.
Right. Makes them feel heard, which is so important.
Totally. And here's the crazy part. When people feel heard, they're way more open to listening to you.
Huh. So it's not about, like, never sharing your thoughts. It's about picking your moments.
Exactly. Create that space for a real back and forth. And lastly, this one's huge for protecting relationships, even when you disagree. Let the other person save face.
Ooh, okay. I like that. What does that look like?
Basically, don't humiliate them. Don't make them feel stupid, even if you're right.
So no gloating if you win the argument.
Exactly. We all want respect. So even when things are heated, if you focus on their dignity, it shows you care more about the relationship than winning.
That's a good point. Takes maturity, for sure.
It does, but it builds trust even when you don't agree on everything.
Okay, so we've covered winning people over, handling disagreements. What about leadership, though? Does Carnegie have advice for, like, actually leading a team?
He does. And it might surprise you, but it comes back to a lot of what we've already talked about: empathy, respect, understanding.
All right, I'm ready for more Carnegie wisdom. Let's do it. So leadership, huh? Does Carnegie, like, give us the secret sauce? How to be inspiring?
Well, he wouldn't say there's a magic formula. More like it's about truly getting people. And it starts with this: the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
Isn't that what we've been saying? Avoid the criticism, avoid the arguments. Sounds like Carnegie just wanted everyone to get along. But how's that possible when you're the leader? You got to make tough calls sometimes.
Absolutely. Disagreements happen. It's more about the approach, not a battle, but working together. And that starts with, seeing things from their side.
It's like a broken record, but in a good way. Empathy, empathy, empathy.
It's the key to everything, right?
Making friends, handling fights, being a good leader.
It's huge. Think about the best bosses you've had. They just get it right. They can tell when you're struggling, even if you don't say it. They make it okay to share your ideas, even if they're different.
That's so true. But what about when someone messes up? You can't just ignore it. How do you address that without, like, going into lecture mode, which we know doesn't work?
Carnegie suggests being a little sneakier. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly.
Interesting. So not shining a giant spotlight on the problem.
Exactly. More like gently steering them. He gives this example. This manager, his employee, keeps messing up the same task. Instead of saying, hey, you're doing it wrong, he asks the employee to show him how he does it, step by step.
Ooh, smart. So he can see exactly where the mistake happens and correct it without making the employee feel dumb.
Exactly. It's coaching, not criticizing. The employee probably doesn't even realize they're being corrected. They just think they're showing off their process.
Let me use that one.
Yeah.
Okay, what else is in Carnegie's leadership toolbox? We've got empathy. We've got the indirect feedback.
Remember how we talked about admitting your own mistakes? Super important for leaders, too.
Lead by example, right?
100%. When a boss can say, hey, I mess up too, it makes them human. Suddenly, it's a safe space to learn, not a place to be perfect all the time.
No one wants to hear feedback from someone who thinks they're always right.
Exactly. Vulnerability is way more effective. Oh, and this one's a little different. Carnegie's big on replacing orders with questions.
Ooh, I like that. So instead of do this, it's what if we tried this? Or how could we make this better?
Yep. It invites the team to be part of the solution, shows that you value their brains, not just their ability to follow orders.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish.
He eats for a day. Teach a man a fish.
She eats for a lifetime. Exactly. By asking, not telling, you're teaching them to solve problems on their own.
And lastly, this one I love. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
Ooh, I feel like I needed to hear that today. It's like saying, you got this. I believe in you.
Right. Expressing that confidence, even if they don't feel it yet, it can be huge. People want to rise to the occasion, but they need someone to believe in them first.
A good leader sees your potential, even when you don't.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. Not just hitting your own goals, but bringing people along with you.
Wow, what a great deep dive. We've learned so much from how to win friends and influence people, from that first impression to disagreeing without being disagreeable, and even how to be a better leader.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but it all goes back to what we talked about, right? Being interested, being kind, seeing the best in people. That's timeless advice.
It really is. It's not about tricks. It's about genuinely connecting with people.
And if presidents struggled with this stuff, then we know we're not alone, right?
We're all just figuring it out as we go.
Exactly. But hey, maybe by remembering these principles, we can make it a little easier on ourselves.
Couldn't hurt.
That's a great place to leave it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into how to win friends and influence people. We'll see you next time.